Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. Have you ever found yourself reading a headline about global rivalries, perhaps in the tech space, and wondering if you're really getting the full story? What if the surface-level narrative misses layers of intricate strategy at play? Today, we're going to unpack just such a situation.
Sounds interesting.
We're looking at America's recent decision to ease its chip export controls on China. A prominent column in The Economist framed this move as a grave mistake, even perverse.
Right, I saw that one.
Suggesting it handed Beijing a strategic gift at a critical moment in the race toward what many call superintelligence.
Yeah.
The core argument was stark. America's brief April to July ban on NVIDIA's H20 chips had effectively throttled China's AI deployment, and lifting it seemed to squander a crucial advantage in a geopolitical arms race.
It's certainly a compelling argument, isn't it? And it captured a lot of attention.
It did.
The idea that these controls were having a significant impact only to be suddenly eased, seemingly for commercial reasons, it suggests a straightforward policy error. But as we truly examine the details, you'll see that Washington's approach here is far more intricate than simply blocking or unblocking access to certain chips.
Okay.
It's a pivot from a blunt denial-first strategy to something much more nuanced and complex.
Let's begin by understanding why that initial perspective, the one highlighted by The Economist and many others, saw this easing of controls as such a profound error. What was the thinking there?
Well, at first glance, the reasoning, it seems pretty clear. China's progress in artificial intelligence has been truly astonishing.
Right.
We've seen examples like DeepSeek, a leading Chinese AI model which really stunned the world with its capabilities.
Yeah, that made headlines.
And in fact, just in July alone, 3 different Chinese labs unveiled top-tier AI models, some even matching or exceeding America's best.
Wow.
So when you consider that many experts believe advanced AI, perhaps even superintelligence, could be just years away.
A scary thought for some.
And knowing the significant geopolitical and military advantages that come with it, any perceived assistance to a rival in this space seems inherently counterintuitive.
And the H20 chip was central to this argument, right? What exactly is it, and why was it so critical in their view?
Precisely. The H20 is a specific GPU or graphics processing unit that NVIDIA developed. They made it to comply with earlier export rules. It's less powerful than NVIDIA's top-tier chips for training new AI models, the really compute-intensive part.
Right, teaching the AI.
Exactly. But the H20 is perfectly suited for running those models once they're trained. That process is called inference.
Okay.
So The Economist argued that after the April ban, even leading Chinese labs couldn't get enough computing capacity to offer their world-class models to customers at scale.
So the ban was actually working, they said.
That was the argument. They were reportedly resorting to things like outsourced hosting, relying on more limited Chinese-made chips. It strongly suggested the ban was impeding their progress. The underlying logic was simple. Slow China down now, even if that meant potentially boosting their domestic hardware industry in the long term.
Because the short-term race was just too important.
Exactly. The race to superintelligence was seen as paramount.
So the perceived trade-off was limit China's AI software industry today, even if it meant maybe emboldening its AI hardware industry down the line. And given the stakes, that initial argument was that short-term control was absolutely non-negotiable.
That sums it up well.
Okay, so that's the initial assessment. But as you mentioned, this situation is far more intricate than just a simple U-turn or a gift to Beijing. What has happened since the ban was lifted on July 14th that truly complicates this straightforward narrative?
Well, what's critical to understand is that America didn't just, simply give up or surrender control.
Okay.
While the Commerce Department did promise expedited licenses for H20s, it crucially retained significant end-user reporting rules.
So they still track who gets them.
They track who's using the chips, yes. And perhaps most powerfully, they retained the ability to reimpose a complete freeze with just 24 hours notice.
Wow, okay. That's a quick turnaround.
It is. So this wasn't a clean capitulation at all. It was more like setting up a regulatory tripwire designed to maintain leverage.
So not a full green light then, more like a cautious amber light maybe.
Exactly. A very conditional green light, perhaps. And beyond those immediate controls, the near-term compute relief for China is actually quite limited.
How so?
Well, even though NVIDIA ordered a huge number, something like 300,000 H20s from TSMC.
Right, Taiwan Semiconductor. to clear those back orders.
Exactly. But the thing is, volume deliveries, they're still maybe 9 months out.
9 months, so no immediate flood of chips hitting the market there.
Not at all. Chinese labs are still having to ration their inference cycles today.
And how has China responded to this more nuanced approach? Has it been welcomed?
Interestingly, no. Beijing has actually pushed back. China's cyberspace watchdog summoned NVIDIA,
Really?
expressing fears that the H20 might contain remote shutdown backdoors, security concerns.
Oh, okay. So a potential kill switch.
That's the fear they cited. And if Chinese regulators start demanding comprehensive source audits of these chips, well, the H20's market traction, and by extension, U.S. leverage could significantly shrink.
So it raises a fascinating question. Who truly holds the cards in this evolving scenario? It's not as simple as the U.S. dictating terms.
Not at all. And adding another layer.
We're also seeing reports about China's own chip development scaling up, aren't we?
Yes, that's a really key factor here. Domestic challengers are rapidly ramping up production. Huawei, for example.
Huawei's a big one.
They're set to mass ship their Ascend 910C GPU this year. That's a powerful domestic alternative.
Right.
And several major Chinese cloud firms are already planning to build server clusters entirely on Chinese silicon.
So the U.S. easing restrictions might happen just as China gets its own alternatives ready.
It's possible. This means a reprieve on U.S. chip exports might arrive just as credible local substitutes become widely available, potentially lessening the impact or the leverage of the U.S. move.
And it sounds like there's been significant pushback, even within Washington itself, over this policy pivot. Not everyone was happy.
Absolutely not. Senior Democrats, former government officials, they've publicly criticized what they call a dangerously inconsistent pivot.
Strong words.
Very. And we're now seeing bills proposed in Congress that would mandate location tracking on these export-controlled chips.
Location tracking. You mean like geofencing?
Exactly. Often referred to as geofencing, to ensure they aren't used where they shouldn't be.
So the policy could change again.
It suggests the current licenses could certainly be tightened again. Maybe after an upcoming August 12th review by the Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, or perhaps through new legislation. The story isn't over.
What's also notable, I thought, was that even The Economist's own tech desk seemed to offer a slightly different perspective on China's AI scaling challenges compared to that initial column.
That's right, and it's an important nuance. They've highlighted that while Chinese AI models are, undeniably state-of-the-art,
Top tier, as you said.
the labs often struggle to serve users at scale, not just due to a lack of GPUs, but perhaps more significantly because of broader operational constraints.
Operational. Like what?
Things like power infrastructure limitations, specialized software optimization, efficient distribution networks. It's about the whole ecosystem, not just the chips themselves.
So that complicates the idea that the H20s were the single critical bottleneck holding everything back.
It does. It suggests the problem is wider than just access to one specific type of chip.
Okay. So if we take all these complicating factors into account, let's directly examine some of those initial claims made in The Economist's column with this more nuanced reading. For instance, the assertion that controls were clearly working. How clear was it?
Well, look, those controls certainly did raise Chinese cloud computing costs. That seems clear. But the reality is far more complex. We've seen significant leaks. Estimates are around $1 billion worth of black market GPUs finding their way into China this year.
$1 billion. That's not insignificant.
Not at all. It demonstrates that unilateral curbs can be quite porous, hard to enforce perfectly. And you couple that with Huawei's brisk roadmap for its domestic chips.
Right, the Ascend 910C.
It becomes clear that these initial bans were always likely to be time-bound in their effectiveness. So calling them clearly working without acknowledging these leakages and the domestic push might be, well, an oversimplification.
Okay, and what about the claim that inference chips are decisive? The H20s, basically.
For today's popular chatbots and large language models, yes, inference chips are absolutely crucial for their real-time operation, no doubt about that. Future AI training techniques, especially things like retrieval-augmented generation or model distillation, they might actually significantly reduce the long-term inference load needed.
So the bottleneck could shift.
Exactly. Which raises a crucial question for policymakers. Are we always fighting the last war when it comes to technology controls? Controls need to track evolving bottlenecks, not just focus on last quarter's pain point.
That makes sense. Then there's the argument that America loses advantage by easing now. How does that hold up under scrutiny?
Well, if we broaden our perspective here, the whole dependency strategy, which people like venture capitalist David Sachs have talked about, It isn't fanciful at all.
Dependency. How so?
China still profoundly relies on NVIDIA's CUDA stack.
Ah, the software side.
Precisely. CUDA is NVIDIA's proprietary software platform. It's this crucial ecosystem of tools and libraries that is absolutely essential for developing and running most advanced AI models today.
So it's not just the chip itself.
Not at all. This reliance extends to critical drivers, firmware updates, the whole package. By issuing conditional licenses, the U.S. effectively maintains a powerful software choke point, even when the hardware ships.
Interesting. So it's less about losing advantage and more about shifting where the advantage lies, from hardware denial to software control.
That's a good way to put it. It's a strategic shift in the nature of that advantage.
And finally, the idea that boosting China's hardware industry later is a price worth paying for short-term AI gains. You mentioned the ban already boosted them.
Yes, this point also deserves close examination. The initial April ban had already given domestic Chinese chip fabrication a significant boost. Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
True.
So, ironically, a calibrated flow of slightly hobbled U.S. chips under these conditional licenses might actually slow down the development of both Chinese or other non-Chinese substitutes.
How would it slow down substitutes?
Because it keeps NVIDIA somewhat dominant, potentially reducing the immediate market urgency or funding for alternatives if a good enough NVIDIA chip is available, even with restrictions. And this buys valuable time for America to work with its export control allies, Japan, the Netherlands, to harmonize rules. Getting everyone on the same page is crucial for any long-term effectiveness.
So what does this all mean then? If it's not a simple mistake, what strategic calculus is Washington actually juggling here? It sounds incredibly complex, with multiple intersecting objectives.
You're right, it is complex. I think they're balancing at least 4 key areas in this geopolitical chess game.
Okay, what's the first?
First, they're aiming for short-run leverage through firmware and cloud services. The terms of these licenses allow the Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, to revoke support if chips are diverted to military end uses.
Something a simple ban couldn't police once chips leak out.
Exactly. A unilateral ban, once black market units slip across borders, offers no such ongoing policing mechanism. This is about maintaining control after the sale.
That's a significant shift from just blocking sales outright.
Yeah.
What's the second factor they're considering?
Second, it's about avoiding collateral damage to major U.S. cloud companies. Think AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud.
All right, they have big businesses in China.
Huge. And they fear Beijing imposing retaliatory restrictions if America completely halts all AI silicon exports. So this partial opening helps protect their China revenue, while maybe sensitive talks on creating secure cloud partitions can proceed.
So protecting U.S. business interests.
It's a pragmatic move in a complex global market, yeah.
And domestically, how does this play out politically? You mentioned the pushback.
That's the third point. Political optics at home. Look, the performance of the stock market, things like the S&P bounce, that certainly matters to politicians.
It is.
But so does that bipartisan scrutiny we talked about. The new bills proposing ship tracking. They suggest Congress is actively looking to toughen export compliance technology without necessarily killing all near-term sales.
A delicate balancing act.
Very much so, between economic indicators and legislative oversight.
And finally, the international dimension must be crucial to all of this. Getting allies on board.
Precisely. Fourth, it's about buying time for an allied front. As we said, key partners like Japan and the Netherlands haven't yet fully matched America's initial April ban.
So going it alone isn't ideal.
Not for long-term success. A pause in purely unilateral action helps keep them aligned, while the G7 group of nations tries to negotiate a shared AI toolbox of controls. That would ideally span chips, design software, cloud access, the whole ecosystem.
Because unilateral action can backfire if it alienates the very allies you need.
Exactly. It can be counterproductive in the long run.
This is such a rapidly evolving situation. As you listen to all this, I wonder what stands out to you. What specific indicator should we and our listeners be watching for to understand how this strategy actually unfolds and whether it proves successful?
That's a great question. There are definitely several key data points or indicators that will reveal the success or failure of this more nuanced approach.
Like what?
First, definitely watch that August 12th BIS review. If they swiftly revoke these licenses, it would strongly signal that the July 14th decision was indeed a temporary leverage play, not a real capitulation.
Okay, the review date is key. What else?
Second, monitor CUDA migration to Chinese alternatives. We talked about CUDA's importance. If major labs in China actually start abandoning NVIDIA's dominant software stack for open source options like ROCm or maybe Daohu, their own homegrown versions.
Then the software chokehold weakens.
Exactly. The dependency theory we discussed around the CUDA ecosystem might start to fade. That would be significant.
Makes sense.
Third, pay close attention to the Ascend 910C cluster uptake. If Huawei's chips get mass adoption for large-scale AI training in China,
Replacing NVIDIA.
potentially, that would significantly shrink NVIDIA's market share there, even with renewed exports, and show that the domestic alternative is truly viable at scale.
And
Finally, keep an eye on congressional chip tracking mandates. If new legislation actually hardwires geofencing into all future export-controlled GPUs, well, that could fundamentally reshape the entire market and the nature of these controls.
Right, adding a technical enforcement layer.
Precisely.
So, as we've really unpacked here, America's seeming about-face on chip export controls is, well, it's far from a simple gift to Beijing, as that initial take suggested. It reflects a much deeper, more strategic pivot.
Indeed. It really looks like a shift from a strategy of, let's call it, static denial, which, as we discussed, can inadvertently spur gray markets and actually accelerate domestic catch-up efforts,
Right.
to one of managed interdependence. That involves careful control over volumes, leveraging those critical software hooks like see a day, using revocable licenses, and even exploring potential for on-chip telemetry down the road to maintain oversight.
But whether this more nuanced approach actually works better than blunt bans, that's still an open question.
It absolutely is. And it hinges on those three dynamic factors we touched on: the real pace of Chinese domestic chip fabrication, the patience and legislative actions of the U.S. Congress, and the long-term stickiness or durability of NVIDIA's crucial software ecosystem.
The real contest, it seems, isn't just about who sells or blocks silicon today. It's much bigger than that.
It really is.
It's about who shapes the rules, the standards, and the dependencies of the entire global AI compute stack by 2030.
A much longer game.
It leaves you wondering, doesn't it, about all the other headlines we read? How many of them might be just as complex, just as layered beneath that immediate surface?
It's a good reminder to always look a little deeper.